morning, everyone. So great to see all 47 of you here. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking a moment to introduce yourself in the Slack, in the chat. I do want to preface by saying I have a 5-year-old, so if you hear anything in the background, it is either him or my cat. So don't mind me if I need to mute myself or step away, and also, want to acknowledge that a lot of us are either working from our offices or working from home. So if you need to step away, please feel welcome to do so. I would like to open our 2022 virtual OWHE conference by first acknowledging the land we are on today. As an organization that aims to interrogate interlocking systems of oppression focused on the intersection of higher ed and gender, we must acknowledge the violent role of settler colonialism and the ways higher ed has benefited from the oppression, exclusion, and erasure of indigenous populations. Over the last few years, our organization has been dedicated to engaging in dismantling oppressive systems and continuing our commitment to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in our practices. We, therefore, want to name the peoples who have been here, who are still here, despite the years of violence aimed at eradicating Indigenous peoples and cultures. We can begin to combat erasure through naming, locating, and honoring people who have been here since time immemorial and are still here. Acknowledging the land disrupts the combat's narratives of invisibility and erasure and frames the acts of colonialism as not only a relic of the past, but as an ongoing process that we participate in. Acknowledging the land we are on is just a first step. I invite you all to write in the chat the original stewards of the lands you call home. If you are unsure, we have shared a tool, and it is on the screen now, that you can use to acknowledge the land. And this is an important step to me, and also because I want to honor the generosity, care, and labor of the Indigenous friends, coworkers, leaders, and tribes. And I believe deeply that our liberation can only be a collective. Having lived across Oregon, including Coos Bay, Roseburg, Eugene, and Portland, I want to acknowledge that I am and continue to be a guest on these lands. To quote, Multnomah County rests on traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. I acknowledge and honor the survivance, resilience, thrivance of Native communities and thank the original stewards of this land. Rita, you're muted.
Thank you. Thought I'd press the button. Thank you, Shania. First, I want to welcome everyone to the second virtual Oregon Women in Higher Education Conference. My name is Rita Snodgrass. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns, and I will be the new chair of the board for this year. Over the past year, I served as the co-director of the annual conference. I've been privileged to work with an incredible group of people this year on the OWHE board as we navigated planning during this pandemic. First for an in-person conference, and then a quick pivot to this virtual format when the conditions demanded a change. We want to thank you all for coming along for that ride. I want to also thank all of our volunteers who engaged with us this year. Thank you to everyone who volunteered to help with the conference, and thank you to our institutional representatives. Thank you to everyone who contributed to and attended our series of webinars last fall. We can't do this without our incredible community, all of you. So thank you. Now I'll turn it over to Shania.
Hi, I'm back. Well, this is a noteworthy day, as after 41 years of this organization making statewide impact across all of Oregon's public and private colleges and universities, it is with the deepest admiration that I announce to you all that you are part of the final Oregon Women in Higher Education Conference. Over the last 4 decades, OWHE has made statewide impact through our events, conferences, networking events, blogs, book clubs, scholarships, and more. Furthermore, as a volunteer-ran organization, we would not be here today without the dedication and support of our members. We want to thank you for the many years. And after 41 annual conferences in the books, the board would like to wholeheartedly and with great care say goodbye to the Oregon women in higher education. However, of course, when one door closes, another opens. In January of 2020, we announced during our annual conference that we would be pivoting this organization and committed to changing our name so as to better reflect our mission, values, goals, and intentions. And shortly thereafter, we were struck by a global pandemic, which in many ways stopped all of us from working, especially those on the board who were working to make this happen. But of course, all of us across higher ed were stopped in our tracks for one reason or another. As a result, our board focused on accomplishing what we could, including putting on our first virtual conference last year. When I took on the role as chair in 2021, it was with my predecessor's vision in mind that I committed to completing what they started. Collaborating with the current and former board members, experts in the field, student advocates, and those who volunteered to join our Inclusion Advisory Committee to define, outline, and officially pivot OWHE. These years have been tough, but these words are years in the making. While our mission remains the same, to facilitate meaningful connection, personal growth, professional advancement, and systemic change for all Oregon women, non-binary, trans people in higher ed, I am proud today to announce that OWHE has hereby been renamed to Gender Advocacy and Inclusion Network in Higher Education, otherwise known as GAIN Higher Ed. We're excited to welcome in the next chapter of this organization and to get to work on what is to follow in completing this pivot. With that in mind, I would like to remind everyone that we've scheduled a town hall to close out this conference on Friday, where we will discuss the name change, the pivot, and the many changes the board has and plans to continue to execute. We sincerely hope you're excited to be a part of GAIN. And I want to drop a link in the chat, which I will in a moment, for folks to include questions that you may have now or may come up throughout this conference that we can plan to address and talk about during Friday's town hall. Thank you all.
Thank you, Shania. Our conference theme this year, Transforming Together, represents the transformation that we've all been undergoing and are still experiencing during this turbulent time. Our workplaces are transforming, our lives are transforming, and we're transforming as an organization. As we plan for our transformation, the board spent a lot of time this year reflecting on who we are, who we want to be, and how we can best serve this community. That work is ongoing, but we've taken a big transformational step by changing our name to GAIN Higher Ed. Our focus will now shift, transform, to welcoming and supporting all marginalized genders. As a gay, non-binary person, I am so honored to serve as the chair of the board during this transformative year. We hope that you'll leave this conference ready to use what you've learned and inspired to continue your own transformations. We center these values in all of the work that we do. Advocacy, supporting policies and inclusive institutional practices, which are directed with impartiality, fairness, and social justice. Celebration, will publicly honor and recognize the impact, contribution, and value of the work of women, non-binary, and trans people in higher education. Community, will facilitate intentional community through networking, mentorship, learning, and celebration for all women, non-binary, and trans people in higher education. Education will create a culture of learning and development, providing an accessible platform for growth and professional engagement for all women, non-binary, and trans people in higher education. Equity We believe that all members of society should have unbiased access to opportunities that will help them reach their full potential. We work from an equity perspective, utilizing an intersectional framework. We strive to create empowering spaces and opportunities in which all women, non-binary, and trans people in higher education can equally access, fully participate, and travel on a path from hope to reality. Inclusivity. We acknowledge and honor the dignity of every human being, value women of all gender identities, ethnicities, and abilities, and welcome all members as they are, both professionally and personally. We strive to create a space for each member to participate as their whole genuine self. And finally, leadership. We inspire and support leadership growth and development for all women, non-binary, and trans people, promoting personal and professional advancement within the field of higher education. Because we want to ensure that everyone feels welcome, supported, and empowered when they participate in our community, either in person or online, we do not tolerate harassment of members or event participants. We respect the dignity of all of our members, value their safety and security, and strive to be an inclusive community. Our community care guidelines define the gender-affirming, difference-bridging, discomfort-embracing, vibrant, and challenging, but harassment-free experience we collectively work to create. We also outline the procedures for addressing issues within our community, online, at a conference, or at other events, should they arise. We believe that we, as a community, keep each other safe, and we're dedicated to enacting community care in all that we do. Allyship is about actively reframing knowledge and actively changing power dynamics. Allyship is a working verb, not a passive noun. We ask that you please engage these practices. Learn, even when you feel confused or uncomfortable. Listen while recognizing the social and informative value and assets of marginalized voices in our conversations. Educate yourself instead of asking others to educate you. Don't take credit for ideas originated by people on the front lines. Act like an ally when no one is watching. Acknowledge your privilege. Contribute resources, time, money, knowledge and information, visibility, and opportunity. This community welcomes and challenges allies and co-conspirators. We believe that our work is more effective when we collaborate with allies. We accept all gender identities and expressions as full members of our community and at our events, as long as they center the experiences of folks with marginalized gender identities and their actions fall within the community care guidelines. We ask that all members reflect on their own social position in regards to class, gender, language, body, legal status, etc., and be a co-conspirator in working towards collective liberation. Now I'll turn it over to Shania for a look at who's here.
Yeah, thank you, Rita. All right, so we, as we do every year, love to provide demographic information that you all have kindly provided us when registering via Eventbrite. And this is just a quick overview of who's here with us today. And I think it continues to help us understand who our members are, and as we especially pivot toward GAIN, who might not be here that our board can now think about, better including at the table. So we actually have 118 attendees, so we got a couple more. Welcome. And of those, we have about 20% who are students and about 80% who are professionals. And of course, we love to look at who across our various institutions is here today. What's really exciting about pivoting to GAIN is that we, sorry, yada yada.
At the smoothie store.
In a little bit, sorry. You put in a request for hot chocolate.
I just want to get a smoothie.
Oh, a smoothie, excuse me.
And soon I want to get hot chocolate.
Okay. But as I mentioned, yeah, 5-year-old. We dropped Oregon from our name, and that was with great intention. We have always noticed and been thoughtful to the fact that we have a lot of members who are coming from Washington. We have members from Northern California. This year we have members from Illinois. Welcome. So that was really thoughtful, or that was part of our thought process this year, was to really think about in pivoting to really rebrand ourselves as an organization that's dedicated to the support of folks along the Pacific Northwest. So this year, we have people from across Oregon, Washington, and other states. Predominantly, our populations are coming from Portland, Oregon State, the University of Oregon, Reed College, Southern Oregon, OHSU, Lewis and Clark, PCC, UP, Western Oregon, Willamette, Linfield, Lane Community College, Temecula, OIT, PNCA, and Washington State University. So welcome. Gender representation. So this is something that has come up as we were looking through data this year to really better understand what it meant to change our name and who wasn't at the table presently. Of course, you can see that our demographic is not super diverse. And this is something that the board has talked about in great length. It's a goal of ours in bringing on our director of JEDI to start to think about how our efforts can be more intentional in welcoming folks that are outside of the cisgender. But of course, you know, this is going to be a long-term project and it is a continual project. It never ends. Diversity and inclusion is a never-ending process, and we're excited to get started. 23% of our members identify as belonging to the LGBTQIA+ community. We want to welcome you all. And race representation, similarly to gender, this is something that we talk about quite a bit. Our board is continuing to diversify, which I think is such a valuable thing to watch happen, because the conversations become more intentional as we're welcoming in folks across race, gender, and other experiences in marginalized communities, and to think about how our efforts can focus in on better identifying members to contribute to the body of knowledge that our organization is working to create. Years in higher ed, this is always fun to look at. Of course, we predominantly are seeing a lot of folks who have a lot of experience, and our seniors in their role and our leaders in their role. And we are really excited to have you all here because, of course, a large part of OWHE is to network and to meet other people who can act as mentors or mentees in your lives and contribute to your own career and professional development. And years of involvement in OWHE. This was really exciting for me to see that almost half of the people here today, this is your first year, this is your first conference, so welcome. I just want to briefly say, after my first conference, I volunteered to be on this board. So I hope that our virtual conference is as impactful as it was for me and some of our other board members. And we hope to continue to see all of you as we move forward as GAIN. And I want to provide a huge shout out to our sponsors this year. This was a big year for us. This was a big year for me as a chair in learning to communicate what our intentions were, what type of organization we are, and where we're hoping to move forward as an organization. It was a big year in deciding to not have our in-person conference. And so I really want to say thank you to our sponsors who stuck by us through a lot of changes, who see the value in the work that we're doing now and the work we're going to continue to do. So thank you to Portland Community College's Women's Resource Center and to Reed College's Office for Institutional Diversity for sponsoring this conference.
Thanks again, Shania.
Yeah.
So now I want to introduce and acknowledge our board of directors. So first, this year's outgoing board, our chair, Shania Siren, who you just met. The outgoing chair, Brianna Stansberry. Our director of engagement was Hayden Todd. Director of Marketing and Outreach is Marwa Alchemies. Director of Record and Analytics, Ashley Weibel. Our Director of Business Operations was Elizabeth Guzman Arroyo. And the co-directors of the annual conference were Jeanette Clay and myself, Rita Snodgrass. And I want to thank all of you for such an amazing year. Didn't know what I was in for when I joined this board, and it's all been good. So looking forward to this coming year, and this will be our new board. The chair of the board will be myself, Rita Snodgrass. Our outgoing chair will be Shania Siram. Our incoming chair will be Marwa Alchemies. Our new director of JEDI is Rebecca Rodas. Our director of marketing and outreach is Jocelyn Valencia Chavez. Our director of education is Megan Simone. And the co-directors of the annual conference will be Jeanette Clay and Tess Buchanan. And we have 2 open seats that are still up for election, the Director of Records and Analytics and the Director of Business Operations. And if you have questions about those, please join us this afternoon at 5 o'clock for a conversation with the board. Or if you're unable to do that, then reach out to us via any method. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you this year. It's going to be another incredible year, I'm sure. We've been pretty busy this year, and I'd like to highlight some of our work. First, as Shania mentioned, we modified one of our board positions. We now have a Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, or JEDI director.
Looks like we may have lost Rita. All right, I'll pick it up. So as Rita was mentioning, we modified one of our positions. We now have a Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Director, otherwise known as JEDI. This board member, Rebecca, will work to build direct, sustainable, long-lasting institutional relationships with departments that have expertise in gender inclusion and advocacy. DEI offices, women's resource centers, and queer or LGBTQ resource centers. Through these relationships, we'll work to build our membership to ensure that our work connects with as many institutions as possible and continues to be aligned with our mission. The new JEDI director will also be launching a gender inclusion and education program this fall, so watch out for that. We also conducted our first ever engagement survey. We identified those who had been involved with OWHE in the past but had not been engaging. Based on that survey data, we relaunched a re-engagement campaign, working to ensure that everyone feels welcomed by this organization. We'll also use that survey data to inform future programming. We're refreshing our technology, giving us greater flexibility and more tools to better engage with you all. And we're working to update all of our digital resources to reflect our new identity. This year, we're really excited to plan a return to an in-person conference. During the entire planning process, it was important for us to ensure that we do what's best for this community to put on a safe conference. As the date drew closer, it became clear that the safest thing to do was to not meet in person. So we made a pivot and moved to this virtual format. So thank you all for being here and sticking with us along the way. Finally, through the year, we've been working on our name transition. We'll begin working under the new GAIN Higher Ed identity after this conference, and we're aiming to have all of our digital resources updated by the end of May. I'll turn it over to Marwa.
Thanks, Shania. Hello, everyone. My name is Marwa Alchemies. I am the Director of Marketing and Engagement for the Oregon Women in Higher Ed, and now GAIN Higher Ed. So it's really, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this conference. And here is a little bit of information on how to stay engaged in this conference and how to stay connected with the various sessions. So you all should have received a link or an email or some sort of communication either through our OWHE email or the Eventbrite email system with a link to access various sessions. The link will go to OWHE.org/online schedule. This QR code will take you directly to that website. And so if you have a phone with you, feel free to scan this QR code. The website is password protected to make sure that we avoid Zoom bombing and other virtual security issues. So the password, we're trying to keep it simple, is OWHE22. The online schedule will have the links to all of the Zoom sessions, all of the webinars that will be hosted throughout the 3 days of the conference. It will also have the descriptions of the various educational sessions and the keynotes and their bios and the information about the panelists that will be happening on Friday. So if you ever have a question about the conference or what to do next or what is happening around you at the specific time, feel free to head to that website and your answer should be found on there. But if not, and you are still having any technical issues or any other questions about where you're supposed to be, feel free to text our helpline, 602-935-4246. A little fun fact, the 4246 spells game. So if you picked up on that, good for you. I did not. So feel free to text that. A board member will be monitoring that number throughout the conference. We prefer text. However, if you need support through a phone call, feel free to call this number as well. And at some point, someone will answer it or respond to a voicemail that you leave. Part of my job is to manage the social media and the virtual engagement that happens for OWHE. And this week and this month is going to be very eventful for us because a lot of our virtual and social media platforms are going to be renamed to Gain Higher Ed platforms. But 3 of them are staying the same. So if you follow any of these 3 platforms on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, only the name will be changed. So if you've been following them, you will continue to follow it with a new name, Gain Higher Ed. So feel free to head over to Oregon WHE for those platforms so you can follow us while we're still in OWHE mode, and you will be among the few followers that are on the new identity of the page. For Facebook, due to unfortunate circumstances that happened when Facebook Business Centers transitioned to the Meta platform, we lost admin control over our previous account. So this is our new Facebook account. The first followers to this account will be entered into a raffle that will be announced on Friday's closing session. So feel free to head over to this account. It's bare bones right now. There's only 1 post there and a cover page of Ashlyn. So if you find absolutely 0 posts, that's the right account. And we will continue to be active on this account moving forward, and we will transition out of the Oregon Women in Higher Ed Facebook account. So to stay engaged throughout this conference, feel free to post your experience on stories, tweet about your educational journey throughout the education sessions and the keynotes and panelists that are sharing their wisdom. Tag us in LinkedIn and Facebook pages and Instagram posts, and we will continue to repost those and share your experiences throughout the conference duration. So looking forward to seeing all your engagement and all your lovely pictures of outfits, pets, children that you may wish to highlight on your account, workspace situations. We would love to see how you are engaging with OWHE22.
Thank you, Marwa. Good morning. My name is Jeanette Clay. I use she, her pronouns, and I am one of the conference co-directors this year. Thank you for being here today and attending this 2022 conference. I'd like to provide some information about conference logistics and the schedule. There are 12 sessions over the next 3 days. These are educational sessions with a total of 16 presenters. Thank you to all of the presenters, speakers, and panelists who are presenting this year. We especially appreciate not only your expertise that you are sharing with the attendees, but also recognize your flexibility to shift from the in-person presentation format to the online conference. Thank you. There will be two keynote speakers, Dr. Sarah Cooten today at 12:15 and Dr. Zoe Gamble-Brown on Thursday at 12:15. Further, there will be a WISE professional panel, WPP, on Friday morning at 9 o'clock with Brooke Colley, Brianna Stansberry, and Shishay Sang. These panelists will share about their careers and their journeys in higher education, and you will also have a chance to ask your questions. Further, there will be two affinity spaces, BIPOC at 3:30 on Thursday and LGBTQ+ on Friday at 10:40. These are informal networking opportunities that will be hosted by an OWHE board member. We also invite you to a conversation with the OWHE board members tonight at 5 o'clock. In this informal space, you will have a chance to meet current board members and ask questions about the two open board positions. On Friday, we will host the conference closing session from 1:30 to 2 o'clock, which will be followed immediately by a town hall session about the OWHE name change to GAIN, moderated by Erica Bestfitch, previously of Portland State University. Each session, keynote, and WISE professional panel will be recorded. The breakout rooms and sessions will not be recorded. We are also using Otter AI for live transcription, which can be selected at the top of the screen in Zoom. We also invite you to complete presenter evaluations, and these links will be shared during each session. We look forward to having you join us for as many sessions as you are able to join. Throughout the conference, we invite you to make yourselves comfortable and engaged in the way that is best for you. We welcome you to have your cameras on or off. We are also okay with children, pets, and housemates being present. Be yourself and make yourself comfortable. Take breaks as you need them and practice self-care. Take care of yourself. When in sessions, please remember to mute your microphones until it is time for attendees to speak. We hope you have a meaningful and valuable time at this 2022 virtual conference. The first session begins at 10 o'clock, so we invite you to take a quick break and join us there in about 15 minutes. Thank you.